our first Gen Z congressman, Maxwell Frost, dragged Big Pharma into next week today.
This is supposed to be the oversight committee, and so far the only oversight we've done is into the municipality of Washington, D.C., into the president, nothing coming out of that, seeing Hunter Biden's dick pic. I mean, this is the stuff we've been doing here. And recently, more than 100,000 people have died from opioid overdoses in 2022, and pharmaceutical companies that push prescription opioids were partly responsible. Yet today, my Republican colleagues turn a blind eye to the opioid crisis. They rather use the gavel to amplify corporate demands that seek to deny Americans access to the resources needed to hold corporations and companies like Johnson & Johnson accountable. Of the $26 billion that 4 major drug companies agreed to pay for their role in the opioid epidemic, about $2 billion went towards lawyer fees. If someone in Bithlo, in my district, had a family member that was mismarketed opioids and suffered life-changing addiction or even worse, death, how would they normally seek redress from the pharmaceutical companies that were partly responsible for the mismarketing?
Through lawsuits.
Through lawsuits. If they got into this lawsuit, could they represent themselves?
They would need counsel.
But they have the right to also represent themselves,
Yes,
right?
they have the right to represent themselves.
Against an army of pharmaceutical lawyers. How would that go if someone was representing themselves? How do you think one of my constituents in Bithlo making 30 grand a year would be able to afford tens of thousands, $100,000 in lawyers' fees? By holding this hearing, Republicans on this committee have shown that they care more about putting profits over people, that they care more about perpetuating a myth that people in communities around the country who have been exposed to toxic chemicals, sold contaminated baby powder, and flooded with opioids in their communities are demanding too much by demanding justice. These folks are not the villains. The American people are not the villains. They are people in our communities fighting back against wealthy corporations, and they're the real heroes. And to Johnson & Johnson, I want to say loud and clear, you paid $5 billion for your role in the opioid epidemic and acknowledged no wrongdoing. Number one, there was wrongdoing. Number two, it should have been a hell of a lot easier to take Johnson & Johnson to task, and I think they should have had to pay a lot more money. Shame on Republicans for holding this hearing to vilify the people who are helping poor and working class Americans level the playing field and stand up for themselves.